This is the July 16th, 2024 meeting of the City of Bangor's Planning Board. My name is Ted Brush, Vice Chairman of the Board. Chair Perkins is out of town for the week. Other board members in attendance this evening include Michael Bazinet, Jonathan Boucher, Trusays, and alternate member Jonas will be filling in due to the absence of other board members. Board members are volunteers from the Bangor community. City staff members in attendance this evening include Planning Officer Ann Collette, City Solicitor Don Seswick, and Planning Analyst Brian Scannell. We thank them for their help. I see our Development Officer is also here, Ann Creed. The Planning Board has multiple roles. First, we review amendments to the Land Development Code, which typically include either changes to zoning districts or changes to text within the code. Our review of these amendments includes adherence to the comprehensive plan, as well as considering any applicable concerns from the public. Our vote on these items is in the form of a recommendation to the City Council as to whether the item ought to pass or ought not to pass. The City Council makes the final decision on zoning and land development code changes. Second, we serve as the regulatory authority for land development permits, commonly known as site plan review. Site plans are reviewed to ensure compliance with city code and as to parking, driveways, stormwater management, lighting, landscaping, and buffering, building location, environmental impacts, and shoreline zoning as may be applicable. We also ensure the plan meets the dimensional requirements for the project's zoning district. For more information on this city's codes and standards, you can find the Land Development Code on the city's website. We will call meeting applicants. We will call the applicants in order that they appear on the agenda. When the applicant is asked to present their project or proposal, they or their representative should come forward to the podium and provide a brief introduction to their application. Once the presentation has been made, the applicant should stay at the podium while we consider any questions from the staff or board members. At that time, the applicant may be seated, and we will open the floor to public comments. If there are any comments from the public, we ask that the person come to the podium, introduce themselves, state where they are from, and indicate that they are for or against the proposal. Either way is helpful if you present your thoughts based on the city code and or the comprehensive plan, as these are the primary documents used by the board to make decisions. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function to let us know you would like to speak, and we can then bring you into the meeting. All comments and discussions should remain respectful and considerate of all others. Once public comments are completed, we will close that item to public comments. The board will then deliberate on the proposal, approve or deny the project, and, as needed, may work with the applicant on compliance issues that need to be addressed. The board may continue the application to a future meeting to allow time for modifications to the plan. If someone disagrees with the decision of the board regarding the site development project, they have the right to appeal the decision to the Supreme Court of Maine, Superior Court of Maine. Once a project you are interested in has been reviewed, feel free to leave the meeting, but please be respectfully quiet so as not to disturb other project reviews. All projects, once approved by the board, must apply for construction permits with the city office. All approved projects need to be started within 1 year of our decision and completed within 2 years. Extensions for good cause may be granted through the code office. We thank all applicants for taking the time to present their project for our review. This process is important for the city's development and direction for our future. So now we're ready to open the agenda. On the first item on the agenda under new business is public input session on a housing production plan. And I believe Planning Officer Colette and the housing consultant will update the board on this plan.
Yep, so actually just gonna leave it open to the consultant. Brian, you wanna bring her over? Oh, she's on there. Hi, Sophie and Philip. Are you guys able to share your screen? I assume you have a presentation, right?
Do.
Okay.
See if I can do it. Is that showing up?
Yep.
Could you put it in presentation mode?
Can you put it in
Yeah,
presentation?
should be show, sorry. There. Can you? Is it
We
showing?
got it. Yep.
Correct.
Description.
My apologies for that taking a minute there.
For it's also presenting over there if you guys have easier time reading it.
So if it's showing around, I'll go record. So we're gonna go through, we're gonna do short introductions on ourselves. So I'm Philip Cash. I'm a partner at HRNA based out of Washington, DC. And I lead our housing practice. Sophie, you take my introduce yourself?
Yep. I'm an analyst with HRNA based in New York.
So we're going to go through, we'll do a little bit more background on our organization and what we're been charged to do. We are in the process of doing a housing market assessment as part of the larger housing strategy. And we're going to go through some of our initial findings and ask in a couple spots for you all to weigh in and give us feedback on what you're seeing in the market, what your experience is, and where you see priorities at, and use that to inform the work that we're going forward. So with that, a little background on HRNA. So HRNA Advisor is a public policy real estate advisory firm. There's about 200 of us. We work with local governments and philanthropic actors and private developers or private owners, really the intersection of the built environment. I lead our housing practice, which we do work in 3 areas. We get hired by cities like Bangor, states like Maine, counties, COGS to understand and develop housing strategy. So really look at what's happening in their housing market, talk with them about what their housing priorities are, and then help them come forward with an action plan. These are the steps they're going to take with public subsidy, with local land use, which obviously that's appropriate with the planning board, and tenants' rights regulations. We also design and implement all the plans, all the programs and policies that you might list in a housing plan. So if you talk about selling public land, or you talk about creating a down payment assistance program, or putting together gap financing for low-income housing tax credit developments, we've designed and set up those programs and run them in different places. Then we also do transaction work. So we underwrite for local governments. So when they're selling land or they're making an investment of public dollars, we do the underwriting, make sure they get the most public good for the public dollar. And we're relatively unique is that we can go from the public meeting, the strategic level, all the way down to the transaction level, to, really trying to make sure that what is said in the public meeting is reflected in the loan documents that are in the transaction, so that what we committed to doing is actually what happens. And when we do plan the strategies, making sure that what we talk about is actually grounded in what's possible real estate financially, real estate economics, so that, we don't just spout happy goals or, high aspirations, but actually focus on what's practical and what can be implemented. So we've been hired to work with the city and the city staff to focus on an actionable strategy. So how to address the housing needs, understand and address the housing needs in Bangor. We had an initial project kickoff. We are in the process nearing the end of understanding what the demand for housing is and what's going on in the housing market. We're going to share, as I said, some of our higher level initial findings on that and get some feedback from you on areas where we might need to dig deeper or try to get more specific on it. And then we're going to move into, from here, really strategies and recommendations. So some priority setting. I'll talk a little about next steps a little bit more at the end. I'm going to go into some of the housing issues. There's a couple spots where I'm going to pause and ask questions, but I can't necessarily see you as well as I might like. If you want to interrupt me and ask a question, if I use an acronym or there's a point you want to talk about in more detail, please, I'm happy to, we're your consultants, we're happy to discuss and get into detail as that's helpful. So when we get hired and someone talks about affordable housing or housing affordability, there's a lot of issues that can be nested within that phrase. And so a big part of what we try to understand with our clients is what challenges are actually happening in your housing market. Where is the housing market not meeting the needs of the community? Is that there's not, the housing quality isn't there, the buildings are older, they're not well maintained, you have residents who are struggling to age in place. Is there a lack of supportive housing to help those with substance abuse or mental health issues and leading to homelessness? Are you having a lot of growth pressure and that's pushing folks out of the market? Really trying to understand which, and it can be, and it often is, multiple challenges, but really trying to understand what challenges are manifesting in the market so that we can think about those challenges whenever we think about the strategies and approaches to address them. So we've had, go ahead. Sorry. We've had some conversations, we've done some market analysis, and we've heard kind of 5 areas come up pretty regularly. One is just the challenge question is like, is there enough housing to match household demand? Not necessarily there's been a lot of growth in the market, but that the type of housing doesn't necessarily match the needs of the community. Then we've heard about the ability to afford to rent homes. So rental affordability is households at moderate income and lower income levels. Is there rental housing available that, rental homes available that they can actually afford? Then within homeownership, we've heard statements and concerns, and we see some of this in the data. We'll talk about it more. Is about the ability of households to access homeownership. First-time homeowners or those coming into the community, is there actually ability to become a homeowner? Then we have heard concerns about housing quality, the ability to maintain and make sure the housing stays safe and decent. And then more recently, in discussions, we've heard a fair amount of concerns about homelessness and those that either experiencing homelessness or at high risk of homelessness. I guess I'd just take a quick pause here. Do these 5 areas generally feel right to you, or are there other areas that you would put forward as housing issues that are challenging your community? Or would you someone here you'd say that actually aren't a fit?
I think that's a reasonable fit.
Not to put one in front of the other, but if you were thinking about which of these would you feel is the most pressing or having the greatest impact, is there one that feels, and maybe they're all equal, is there one that feels more prominent?
Rental affordability and home ownership would be the top 2.
Yeah, that's clear.
And I'm not speaking for the board, I'm just a member.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was that they're all downstream of housing supply. If there was more housing supply, rental affordability would be mitigated. I had to need my glasses to read this. It's so funny. The homeownership would be the access would be mitigated. The housing quality would be less of a concern because there'd be more availability of other properties. But I think it's fundamentally supply. I don't know. Do we want to have a discussion around this, or do we want to just keep moving through the slides?
We'll get into some more slides on some of the data we're seeing, and you'll get a chance to weigh in some more. So this is a helpful initial push.
May I? Just one more comment. Personally, I agree with everything that was said by the other members, but I do think that the one that will be the most difficult to get good data around is the issue around the unhoused population and what challenges they face. I think it's really hard to find really good, insightful data around those items, and so I challenge that might be the most difficult.
As we go through our slides, I think you'll see that is correct, at least in the data we have. That is the area we have the weakest amount of data. We can talk a little bit more as we get into it, where we might dig more and how we can substantiate that and how we can put some more measurement to it. Any other comments before I move along?
Do you cover property vacancy, like vacant property or abandoned property?
We do. We hadn't heard. We heard a little bit in the housing quality, which can slide into that space. There's overlap. We hadn't heard a lot about vacancy. This is me reaching out and taking notes. We hadn't heard a lot about that in a previous conversation. So these are properties that have fallen in disuse because they're not in good condition, or because they've been passed from one generation to the next, and the next generation isn't in the community. Or can you give me a little more background on what you're thinking there?
I'm thinking about, properties that aren't being lived in actively, either properties that are owned and not lived in by the owner, or have been abandoned that are now property of the city, or are owned by banks and are vacant, things like that.
So like REO, when you say owned by the owner but not lived in, but you're not thinking like a vacation property, or would that be in the purview?
It would be, I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to be like the second home issue, but I know some of the cities along the coast and suffer from their housing stock getting utilized, or I'm trying not to use a pejorative language around it. Having a lot of their housing stock gets tied up in second or third homes of like a tourist population. So that, I think there's a component of that. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that other than just anecdotal info. I don't think that's our major concern, but the bank-owned properties, the city-owned properties, I think that might be a meaningful area.
Okay, that's an area we can dig into. I think bank-owned is a little harder to quantify, but there's some things we can look at that gives us a sense. City-owned should be easier to quantify. Okay, that's it.
Did you clarify the non-resident owner question? Did you get an answer to that you understood?
From me?
No, did they get an answer that they understood? Because I thought they asked specifically, we have a lot of heir properties here, I guess, is what we're getting at. Where the family member passed away, all the relatives, the offspring live out of state, and may or may not even pay, I don't know, may not want to give it up, but don't really want to with it either, so, yeah.
And are those sitting, I'm asking you as if you'd have all the in the world, but just anecdotally, is your concern on those properties sitting empty or being used as rental?
Sitting
Empty.
empty.
Okay. This is an area I don't think we've dug into, but we can dig into more. Move on to the next.
Philip, I'm just
Yep, go
gonna
ahead.
interrupt real quick. So we do have the placarded and vacant property list that we hold internally here, and that's something that was sent over to them for them to go through that as well and put into the report.
Yeah, okay. We haven't gone down and quantified it, but I think that's certainly something we can get into. Absolutely. So then, just starting to get into these a little bit, like talking about the housing supply, thinking about who's having trouble finding a housing environment, what type of housing is needed, but also what are some of the factors that are driving, both causing and driving the challenges around housing supply. So, we do see limited development, limited overall housing supply, and some of that ties into changes in population. Like we see younger households, like whenever we see, it's not just housing, but housing is a factor. We see younger households, not staying in the community. An aging population is also, raises questions about the kind of supply you need and whether it's actually meeting those needs. We see limited market churn, so number of homes being sold or moved around. So a relatively stagnant market, which is another indicator for us that the market is, on the supply side, a little locked up because people tend to not move when there's not somewhere else to move to. And if you're not having significant population growth, that can also help drive the supply. The other part we looked at is relative to what rents are and sales prices are in your community, construction costs are high. So we see this often in markets where the value folks are either able or willing to pay is less than what it costs to create. And that's not true for all the housing types. And we're going to, from our analysis for the next phase, dig in a little deeper on that. But it is it does seem to be, as we start to look at the sales prices and we do some back of the envelope calculations on what it costs to build, that is a significant factor in what's going on with the housing supply and why there isn't more housing supply coming on the market. Is there isn't that much growth, but there's also, it's hard for it to pencil out and actually be financially viable to build. When you all are seeing, like obviously you're planning board, so you see a lot of development approvals come forward. Are there other barriers to housing? Like you've made a lot of changes to zoning, which we'll talk a little bit later, maybe reduce some significant number of those barriers. Are there barriers that you're seeing in particular that are constraining housing supply that you would call out or ask for areas of, as we're doing our analysis for us to focus on?
Well, some of the perceived barriers are traffic problems, additional housing bringing traffic problems, and changes in neighborhoods that, in terms of the style of living in the neighborhood and the safety, those issues have been brought up with housing development.
And that's brought up when folks are in opposition to you all approving a development?
That's right.
Yep, that's helpful to understand. So
Ma'am?
go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question of staff? Because I haven't been here long enough to really know. Are we feeling that attracting developers to help us increase our housing population is challenging? Are we?
I feel like Anne might be able to
Yeah, I can
answer the
Oh,
question.
thanks, Ann.
Sure.
I hate to put you on the spot, but
That's
thanks.
okay. Ann Craig, Director of Community and Economic Development. We do get a lot of, even market rate developers looking at large-scale developments in Bangor. And, what we're finding, the reason why they don't move forward with it is construction pricing. So, we've removed, as you know, you've been part of that as the planning board. We've removed a lot of barriers to housing, and we always have more that we could do. But what we're hearing now is construction pricing.
Is it primarily materials? Is it labor? Is it both?
All of the above.
Labor
And
supply,
timing.
Timing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And so those are areas we're going to dig deeper into, is like where are the inflection points you can address, but what's within the city's you all control to actually change construction prices. You can't change tariffs or international trade policy. You're not the Federal Reserve, so you can't shift interest rates, but there are things you can do on building standards and sometimes with subsidy or finance tools to move forward, which we'll talk more about in the next phase. On the rental affordability, which is an area you all called out as a high level barrier. When we look at the market, the number of households, at different income levels, and the number of rental homes that are available in there's about 1,900 more households making $35,000 or less, and there are homes affordable at that price. So there's a gap here, or a shortage here. That's significant, needs to be addressed. Also want to put it in perspective of there are no counties in America that don't have a shortage at this income level. So it's both an income challenge and a housing challenge. But we want to call it out. I think as we look at households making up to 80% of the area median income, more than half of those households are cost burdened. So they're paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. So that's considered unaffordable. Half the households making less than 80% being cost burden. That's not the highest rate we've seen, but that's on the higher end. That's a tight rental market. That's a challenging market. You don't have the highest rents you're seeing in communities in Maine. Portland's got that, but you certainly have one of the highest growth rates in your rents over time. as we're looking at other communities in Maine. So, Lewiston, Augusta, Brewer, your rents have been growing, and this is really in the last several years, since COVID. They've been growing quickly. Your number of lower and moderate income households is dropping. Now, we can't look at the data and say 100% that is just because households are not able to afford and they choose to move out. It could be households having their incomes rise too, and there's probably is some part of the story. There's not an easy way for us to differentiate too, but generally when we see those numbers drop, it's primarily a cost driver outside the community. So you do have, your renters in your community are facing a tough market, and it's not getting easier for them anytime in recent years. Does that line up with what you all are? It sounds like that lines up with what we talked about a little earlier. Does this generally match with what you are seeing? Are there other aspects of how this is playing out, or the particular households this is impacting, families or older households?
Could you read the table key? The different colors.
Sure. So light blue is cost burden, dark blue is severely cost burden, and green means you're okay. You're not cost burden. So severely cost burden means you're spending more than half of your income on rent or housing costs that could include utilities. So if you look at your under 50% AMI, there's significant portions of them are spending more than 50%. I'll move along. Excuse me. On homeownership, we're also facing challenges. Very definitely a skew towards older households in the community overall, and your homeowners are, vast majority here. We're talking almost 80%, more than 3/4 are older than 45. So, they're older households. Median home values in Bangor went up significantly from 2020 to 2022. That's a trend we saw nationally. They're still, when you look at national averages or even averages throughout the state, not on the more affordable end, but that's always relative to incomes. A significant portion of your homeowners are cost burdened, so they're paying more than 30%, and so that means to some degree they're struggling to afford it. That rate's the highest among your seniors. That can be a little misleading when you look at the data, because seniors, it's not looking at assets, it's just looking at income, but it is something to take seriously and try to understand where the burden is amongst your homeowners right now. When we look at this though, it does seem to indicate pretty clearly that accessing home ownership in your market is difficult, that younger households are struggling to access home ownership. The data seems pretty clear on that point. Curious, again, this is something you all flagged when you talked about earlier. Does this generally feel like what you're seeing in the market? Is there anything you'd add to this or correct?
Well, I had a comment.
If you could go up to the.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Richard Duffy is my name. I live on Holland Street. Own a home with my daughter. You're saying how 30% is cost, I can't read it now, it's too far away. Cost burdened, or you get the term you used.
You said it right. You said it right, sir. Cost burden.
That seems bad. 30% seems normal, not cost burden to spend on housing. So I'm questioning that.
Sure. So, yeah. So the standard is if your cost burden if you're spending more than 30%. I think it is becoming increasingly common. So more than half of your renters, half the renters in the community are spending more than that. The next line is extremely cost burden, which is spending more than 50%. So I think you can, different communities definitely have different tolerances for what that is, but that is the standard that's used.
Well, I just want to comment back on that assumption. Even if it's the standard assumption, 30% of your income on housing isn't cost burden. That seems pretty normal.
More comments before I move next slide? So then in terms of housing quality, the vast, more than half of the homes that we're looking at in Bangor are more than 50 years old. So there isn't great data nationally, although you have your vacant property survey locally. There isn't great national data on on housing quality in terms of quality conditions because we don't do inspections. So we really use the age of property as an indicator. That doesn't, not all the properties are in bad shape. Lots of properties have been very well maintained, but when the majority of your stock starts to be more than 50 years old, we usually expect to see housing quality issues. I think, what I heard feedback is, yeah, there's some challenges there, but that's not a top tier issue. More of a concern on the renter and home ownership side. And then those properties that have actually stopped being actively used, so are vacant, not necessarily abandoned, but disused. Is there other aspects you guys would add to that on terms of the quality side? Or does that line up with how you are seeing this? Okay, see what lines up. So we also, this was mentioned earlier, Anne brought this up, trying to understand what's happening in the market, what policy actions, what programs have already been put in place. There have been a lot of improvements and changes on the land use side to really address housing supply. So these are some of the, this list is what we're working from right now. There's also been public money and public funding focused on supporting existing households. So down payment assistance to help households access homeownership, improve, weatherization funding and owner-occupied rehabilitation funding to help households who are living in homes right now actually maintain them and address the quality. Then on the vulnerable populations on the homeless side, some of the rental assistance otherwise. These are the next stage of work we're getting to is really starting to look at these programs and focus on what are the policies and what are the programs that can actually put in place to address your housing challenges. But as we go forward, are there other policies that have either been enacted or been considered that you would call out for us to make sure we're giving consideration to, or areas that, of these policies that you think we should be focused on? No? Of the changes you guys have made on the zoning, on the land use side, has there been an area where you've seen developers, I know construction costs are particularly challenging right now, but are there an area where a change you made that you've seen thought had significant impact? Has led to some more development occurring?
I think this captures it. Yeah, I'm glad to see the ADU and the short-term rental ones on there. Those are the ones I was thinking of before I was able to read them.
So I apologize. So is it showing up really small for you all?
No, it's just my eyesight, I think. That's why I'm wearing my sunglasses or prescription, so even though I'm indoors.
You can also send this ahead of time so you guys, everybody.
No, I think this.
Next time, I apologize. So these are areas we're focused on. I'll go to the next slide. So as we start getting to the next, okay, we're doing our market analysis. We're going to pull some additional information. You all flagged, make sure we're going through the vacant properties piece, look at heirs properties piece. Also, really what we're leading to strategies and priority setting is getting into priorities for public funding. So with the public funding you have through ARPA or other local public funding, how our recommendations are going to get into which types of homes should be prioritized. Is this affordable rental housing for the elderly based on need? Is this affordable rental housing for families? Is this support for existing elderly households to be able to stay and age in place? is this entry-level homeownership product? These are all, frankly, as we look at this, those are all areas we haven't seen need in your community. And what we're going to try to do is take the data and go back and forth and look at your program options and set some priorities about where you would prioritize public funding to have the greatest impact, both on releasing the need, but also the capacity to address it and attract other funding into the market, federal or state money, so you can actually have leverage to have the greatest impact. So that'll be one of the first areas we're going to come, next piece of work on the work focused on. Then we're going to talk about recommended approaches. So are there different ways to deploy the money through land acquisition, through construction financing, through a mortgage guarantee, through a public-private partnership, combining with public land or a tax abatement or a pilot that's actually, we think will have the greatest impact, stretch public dollars the farthest, or could be combined with land use or other policy changes that would achieve, make the most good here. And then from there, we'll get into a set of recommendations on some implementation guidance. So what would be the next steps? How might you set up an RFP or an RFQ process to actually find the right development partner and bring them in your community and really get into guidance. And that's the next, as we finish the analysis here and make sure we're understanding what's happening in the market and the challenges, we're going to be turning to these priorities, approaches, and then implementation guidance. And that's, that is where we are at in the process and how we're moving forward. So I spoke a lot, I jumped around. I'm happy to speak to other items or take questions as that's helpful. And I appreciate everyone's time.
A question for city staff. This reminds me a little bit of when we did the comprehensive plan, when we had the consultants bring forward items and we talk about it and eventually we voted it forward. How is this gonna, how do you foresee this unfolding in future meetings? Are we gonna have more presentations like this with the consultants? Are we gonna be voting on something, or is there some document at the end of this?
There will be a document, there will be the study itself. I don't think you would be voting on anything for this. As far as future meetings, I think Kyle or Ann could probably answer that question better, or the consultants, because they've been heading this process, so.
Yeah, we'll bring the draft, when they have their first draft prepared, we'll bring that back to the board, because we'd like to get your recommendation to city council for their acceptance or other edits that need to happen.
Is that for the action plan coming off of it, or?
For the first draft of their final document, yeah.
Nice.
And what about getting public input into it?
Well, we did some notification for this evening's meeting, and we also did notification for the Livable Communities Committee that was held a couple weeks ago. And we'll probably have one more. They've been meeting with stakeholders as well, just to get some feedback from people in that, using that method as well.
So going along with that, just want to reiterate, this is a public input session, so if anybody wants to say
Right.
anything, feel free to say something.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll wrap this up.
Wait, we have a member Paul. Hi, Yoshka Winterling from Broadway in Bangor. I had a question about one of the graphs shown. I imagine I'm just not reading it correctly, but it was regarding the change in population of different age groups, and it seemed to show a net decrease in population, even taking into account if you exclude children. It seemed like there was a net loss of population. Am I misreading that graph between 2012 and 2022?
That's correct. There has been a small population decline overall.
So how does that impact the housing shortage? What is causing there to still be a housing shortage despite a net population decrease in the city?
So I think two factors there. One is you are losing some housing is going offline, which came up. So you're losing households, but you're also losing homes. The other is the shortage is really about affordability. So there might be a home, but there's a shortage of homes that households can actually afford to live. Although acknowledging the comment earlier about where we're drawing the line about what households can afford. We were drawing the line at cost burden at 30%, and there was a statement earlier about whether that should be the line. Is that helpful?
That's very helpful. So it seems like there is a general housing shortage, but there's also maybe a larger problem of an affordable housing shortage.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll conclude this item. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to amend the land development code by rezoning a parcel of land located on 14th Street at map lot R 35-054-B from urban residence 1 district to multifamily and service district. Said area contains approximately 2.59 acres of land and it is more particularly indicated on the map attached to our documents. So, and the applicant owner is the city of Bangor, and Colette will make the presentation.
Maybe just Ann.
No, actually, I will.
Oh, you're
That's
gonna-
all right.
I'm sorry.
That's why I'm here. Again, for the record, my name is Ann Krieg. I'm the Director of Community Economic Development for the city. I'm here representing the city's interests on this particular parcel. Just to give some background on this property, the city has looked at this property many times over the last 5 to 6 years and actually done requests for proposals to place housing, a housing development there. The site is somewhat constricted because of the grade and the site distance, so, that kind of forces sort of that traditional URD1 type development, with a single family home, with an ADU maybe, makes that very difficult because of the driveways coming out directly, that many driveways coming out on to 14th Street, they wouldn't meet the site distance requirements for the city. So it kind of forced us to think about developing this parcel in a different way. And one way that we were looking at is using the multifamily district because that offers more opportunities to be able to develop in the sort of the top portion, grade-wise, of the property, so that the entrance to it can be, located a lot more safely. So that's why we're looking at the multifamily district. We also looked at the comprehensive plan. It is in the growth boundary, and, a higher density is anticipated for properties that are in the growth boundary. And we've been working recently with the Housing Authority, but as you know, I've always lectured the board over the years about, we don't look at necessarily the final developer or the final development. We're really looking at this as no matter who we end up working with to develop this site, we feel that the multifamily district is the correct district for this property. I'll take any questions.
Are there any board questions? Okay, and any public questions or comments?
I think so. Is this where we can
Yes,
say,
introduce yourself.
Richard Duffy again, I co-own a home with my daughter on Holland Street. It's right near where the development is proposed. I go down that road from Ohio, take a right on 14, and every day going to work. And it's on a hill, like a lot of Bangor is, but it's got a very wide curve. Arc of it is very small, but you can't see very far ahead, no matter where you are on it, because it keeps turning. And it seems like, it doesn't seem like a good place to have more cars coming out. If those were homes, I think it would require a sign saying, you know, driveway ahead, caution. It's that kind of a place, you can't see ahead. And it is a bit of a hill, which in the winter gives, you know, slippery. It's a good place because it has a graveyard on the other side. So there's clearly no traffic coming out of there, we hope. But it doesn't seem a safety, it doesn't seem great from a safety standpoint. I would think the probability of an accident would be much higher there than most other places.
I have a question for Planning Officer Craig. Just so I can visualize where this lot is. It's off to the right, and they've been parking construction equipment there over the years?
Yes.
Okay.
You've been using it as a sort of a lay down for, you know, equipment during
Okay.
construction.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure I had it in my mind, the right property.
Okay, is there any further questions, comments from the board, any more discussion? Okay, now this is looking for a ought to pass or ought not to pass motion.
Vice Chair. Am I right, we always want to do the affirmative, like, I'd say ought to pass, and then we vote up or down on it, yeah, just for simplicity, all right? I'd like to make a motion. I move that a zone change for 14th Street ought to pass for map lot R35-054B, Urban Residence 1 District, URD 1, to change to multifamily and service district, M and SD.
I'll second that.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Second from Member Bazinet. Have a roll call vote. Member Bazinet,
Yes?
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. So it's approved and must be approved by the city council at their next meeting to pass. Okay, the next item on the agenda is land development permits application for major site development plan for proposed construction of approximately 21,000 square foot co-living dormitory with an associated parking lot at property located at 416 Stillwater Avenue, map lot R55-11, in a contract shopping and personal service district zone. The applicant owner is 416 Stillwater Avenue. Will they come forward, please? Oh, before we do that, I'm sorry, rushing the gun here. First, I want to say that the staff has indicated that the completeness of this application and is ready for board review. That the fees have are documented and paid, the applicant standing is confirmed. Does the board have any concern with these issues?
Chair, I don't have a concern with those issues, but I do have to say that I live in the neighborhood behind where this development is gonna go. I had a conversation with Anya this morning, and some of my neighbors are here tonight to learn more. And so I just wanted to make that known that, and they just found out this morning from the Bangor Daily News article that was out, so I just wanted to make the board aware that,
Do you think you should be recused?
I'm not gonna have any, there's no benefit to me, but I do live in the neighborhood.
I think we should vote on whether you should be recused. Any more comment? Any questions? Member Hayes?
Just to clarify, the standard is there a financial City Solicitor, would you remind us, is it financial and?
A financial or special interest that would make, that is different than the interest of the general public.
Are you one of the abutters to the property?
No. When I spoke with Anya this morning, and I asked, that notice hadn't been sent, she said because no houses within the neighborhood abutted within 100 feet.
So you're not in a butter.
No, just live in the neighborhood.
So you mean like the general region?
Are the folks in the audience your friends?
Well, like, they're my neighbors, so I would probably say yes. I mean, no real close relationship, but neighbor relationship.
I'd like to have a motion about whether member A should be recused from this item.
Do we have enough people to vote on it?
I think no, you would have to postpone.
We don't have enough.
If member Hayes just recused.
But-
Do we have enough people to vote on her recusal?
Yes,
Okay, good.
okay. But that shouldn't factor into your vote on the recusal. The recusal should be based on whether there's a conflict or not.
I'm saying, do we need a quorum to vote? Do we need 4 members to vote on a 5th member? Do you see what am I getting?
You need a quorum to conduct activities, but you can vote
Just the majority?
on whether there's a conflict or not. And she, and member Hayes wouldn't vote, so there would be a vote of, the majority would determine. That being 3 out of 4.
So we'll need a majority to,
I'd make a motion. So I'm gonna phrase it in the affirmative again. Saying that I move that, Tricia, what's your last name? I'm sorry.
Hayes.
It's just one of those long days. I move that Tricia Hayes should recuse herself from this agenda topic.
Second,
okay, so roll call vote on this. Member Massenet?
yes.
Member Boucher?
No.
Member Jonas?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
And the chair votes no also. So we have a majority voting that will not be recused from this. Thank you. Okay, so going back, back to the question, the fees have been documented as paid. The applicant standing is confirmed. Does the board have any questions or concerns with these issues?
I do. It's a question for city staff. There did seem to be some lingering payment items that we had to put as conditions for.
Yeah, that's the impact fee, and it's not, that usually comes before the building permit. We just ask that a condition be made to make sure it is paid before they apply or get the building permit, but it's not necessarily a land development permit.
And it's not connected to it's not a requirement for the completeness to be met.
No, although if you wanted, I mean, you could condition that statement on the impact fee, but you'll be making that condition later.
Later, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I'd like a motion that in those 3 items for the procedural background items,
Chair.
that is, the application is deemed complete, the applicant has paid all applicable land development fees, and the proposed project is a major site development. Member Boucher?
I move the application has been deemed complete on July 16, 2024, that the applicant paid all applicable land development permit fees, see Exhibit 4, and that the proposed project is a major site development.
Whoa, second?
Second.
Member Jonas? Roll call vote? Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes?
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Before you move on, just want to note that you do only have 5 members, so technically you're supposed to give the applicant the opportunity to postpone if they wanted
Thank
to.
you. Try. So, since the membership is reduced tonight from 2 absences, you have the opportunity to postpone the hearing if you want. We have a quorum, we're able to vote on it, but if you would prefer to have a full board, that's your right to do that.
Does it require a certain, I guess, a certain vote to be
It requires.
approved, or?
No,
Well, it
no,
requires,
just request, as far as I know.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're asking, but it requires 4 out of 5 votes for the project to be approved. If
Okay.
that's what you're asking.
Yes.
I don't see a problem. I'm looking, the applicant is here in the room, so I don't see it being a problem to move forward.
Okay.
In subsequent meetings, will there be additional members?
Likely,
If subsequent meetings aren't necessary, will there be additional members
probably.
available? In other words, is the board fully staffed? In other words, if in fact tonight was postponed, is the board fully staffed at its typical number?
There are 7 members right now, right?
We can't predict, actually. Tonight, it's unusual that we have only 5 members. Typically, we have 7. And so, but you never can tell.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the applicant decides to go ahead with this. Okay, so your presentation.
Thank you. Sean Thies with Haley Ward, representing the applicant tonight, 416 Stillwater Avenue LLC. Paul Woods, the owner, is here as well. The proposed project is a approximately 21,000 square foot building. It's a co-living dormitory use, which is a relatively new use in the city. It's located, so Stillwater Avenue is here. The site was formerly Little Angels daycare facility. There's a main space self-storage facility right next to the property, which is also owned by the applicant. The facility will have approximately 55 rooms for a co-living dormitory. And what that use is, it's individual rooms for rent. They would have shared common facilities as far as bathroom facilities, a shared kitchen facility, things like that. But the ordinance explains this, I think it's very detailed as far as what needs to be provided in those types of uses. There's a proposed parking lot here, which is, I believe about 45 spaces. It's more than what the ordinance requires for this type of use based on the number of rooms. We provided a stormwater treatment area in this corner here, as well as on the back side of the building, to treat stormwater from the site. It all drains towards the back. This is the, there's a walking trail, I guess, if you will, that runs along the Njajawak marsh back here. Access is at the same, proposed at the same location as is currently existing. There was sort of a shared access to Little Angels and the storage facility. That same curb cut will be utilized. This site is on the bus route, which was another requirement in the ordinance. Then there's planned to have storage space in the building for bicycles for people that live there. It's anticipated that most of the people that would rent out rooms in this type of facility probably don't have cars as well. It's meant for whether it's transient workers, with traveling nurses, things like that, or contractors, or people that just maybe can't afford. Like we've just had a presentation on high rents and things like that, so people that are trying to work their way up to be able to afford more traditional type apartment or a home, this could be a place where they could rent for a period of time until they could afford something different. Utilities are all either come from either Stillwater Avenue or the utility line here in the back. This happens to have an easement for, there's a sewer line that goes across this adjacent property where the sewer main ties into. We have a little bit of outdoor, I'll say outdoor recreation type for people that are staying there. Some picnic tables, some outdoor grills, things like that to provide a little bit of outdoor space for them to use. Beyond that, the traffic generated, I know that there was some concern sent to the city today about possible traffic and traffic issues on Stillwater. We're all well aware that traffic on Stillwater is not very good. This isn't projected to generate, even based on all the rooms, 55 rooms with projecting that they have vehicles, is relatively close to what was previous projections for a daycare facility on the site. So there's not really much of an increase that way. And it's, I think, around 30 or 40 peak trips in the peak hour. Beyond that, I think we meet all the standards for this use in the zone. It's an approved, or it's a permitted use in the zone. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Would this be a single occupancy?
Yes, single room occupancy.
Visitation is allowed, not allowed, overnight guests?
There wouldn't be, so the rooms don't accommodate overnight guests, if that's what you're.
Or what if the renter wanted to have an overnight guest sleep on the floor? Is that gonna be allowed, or is it going to be single occupancy all the time?
I believe it's single occupancy all the time.
Thank you.
Is there going to be access to the trail behind the building?
That is, so currently, this piece of property here that's behind the lot is owned by this adjacent property, this Oceanside Properties. Their lot is sort of, it's odd shaped and comes out and they own this piece here. So the lot doesn't currently have land up to the trail, but the applicant is planning to try and work with the adjacent property owner to get maybe some sort of an easement that they could tie into the trail back there to provide a spot where people staying here could access that and then be able to, again, have some additional outside.
Well, I know the storage unit has had some issues. They've blocked off where people were cutting through from Stillwater onto the trail and through. There's gates up there now and some large boulders to
The gates are
prevent
from the
people
city. The actual trail is owned by the storage facility, not by the city. That is a private property that people have given permission to use. Those gates you see are for the benefit of the Portland Water District and the sewer department, Bangor Water District and the sewer department.
You should come up to the mic.
You should come up to the mic, please.
Good evening, Paul Woods, applicant. That trail is privately owned. The gate you see is City of Bangor put that gate up, and it's to, because it's actually roadway, not just a trail, for sewer and water easements. It's to keep vehicle traffic only to approved.
That's the gate on Garden Way, but
Garden
there,
Way.
right, on Garden Way, but behind the storage building, there's been, a chain link, not a chain link fence, but a chain across.
That's just for the emergency exits to make sure that's maintained. That's all within the private property itself, not on the property line. So that is sort of inter-property fencing, and the gates are not locked, those are open because they're emergency access ways. But that is all entirely, not even on the property line, that is entirely on the property that's owned by the storage facility. And it's emphasized that that actual trail is privately owned for the first 500 feet or so.
Yeah.
And then the city owns it and what have you, but they've granted use, permissive use for quite some time.
Yeah, and we appreciate that.
Questions? No?
This could be for city staff, but the turnaround that's available there, does that meet the need from the fire department? For, yeah,
They were good with that, so.
okay, great. And then, maybe I'm just missing it, but was there a sprinkler requirement for this type of building?
I'm sure there will be, but that, yeah, I'm pretty sure they addressed that because they had separate fire and.
Yeah, there's a separate water service, water sprinkler service to the building.
Maybe I'm just not finding it, but, so there will be. Okay, I just wanted to, because there's so many people in there, you just want to make sure that that's.
I don't think it may not call that out in the narratives, but it's shown on the plan, there's two. There's a
thanks.
fire protection line and a domestic water line to the building.
Yeah,
And they have to follow the same building codes as a regular dormitory. So just putting that out there.
great.
Member Hayes?
So this is anticipated that the people that stay there will be there for longer than 30 days? So-
It's open for really anything, it could be up to a week, 2 weeks, could be a month. There's no set. I think there is a percentage that needs to be a certain amount, if I remember right, and that might be an ordinance requirement.
Yeah, in the ordinance, the definition says 75% of the rooms at least have to be for longer term stays, so over 30 days, and then maximum 25% can be used short term, so less than 30 days.
So 25% would be like 13, 14 rooms.
And that's not rolling, right? That they have to be pre-qualified to be short-term rentals.
Yep, they would have,
And fit into the quota, the
yes,
citywide quota,
yes, they'd have to get a short-term rental
or
license.
limit, sorry, limit, not
Yep,
quota.
for each
Sorry.
room. And I'll mention that later as far as the condition goes, but they do have to get the short-term rental licensing for those, and then they have to get business licensing for the long-term rentals.
That's the condition, okay.
Yeah.
I have a question about the parking, because you're proposing substantially more than is required for this application under this. Why? If we're gonna have people that are maybe biking, and I'll get to walking in a second, but, and not that many vehicles, why so much parking?
Well, we don't know, I mean, we don't know how many people are gonna have cars or how many people aren't gonna have cars. There's a potential there, if you have 55 rooms, I mean, potentially you could have up to 55 people with cars. We don't expect that many. I think with the ordinance, I believe, one space for every 2 rooms maybe, or,
One and three.
One out of three,
one for 3, so
so you're
that
proposing.
would be much less, and I don't know as though that would be realistic either. So we have room on the site, it fits in well, I think, we've got the stormwater treatment to handle it, that amount of impervious area. So that's what we went with for the parking.
And just want to note on the 1 and 3, the other stipulation on this use is that they be within a half mile of a transit route, and they are right next to the transit route, so that was supposed to mitigate the reduction in parking.
Which leads right to my next question. Because yes, it's on the transit route, but the nearest stops are, I know there's a stop at Acadia Hospital, but I'm not sure it's still on the bus route because it doesn't show on the map that's on the Community Connector website. And the other one's at the Bangor Mall, which, but there's no sidewalk that goes toward Acadia Hospital because it goes underneath the highway and can't put a sidewalk there, there's drainage soil
Yeah.
there. I'm sorry?
I was gonna say that there's a bus stop in front of the craft store, not at the mall itself, where Buffalo Wild Wings. And there's another bus stop just further down on the same side as the proposed site that is well before the mall. And you see people walking the sidewalks every day in that area. So it is well served by public transportation, and the access for that is very much there.
So are you saying, and forgive me again, I'm kind of new to Bangor, this time around. So there are bus stops that are not on the community bus stop map, is that the case?
No, I'm not expert on the bus route, but I know there's a bus kiosk, a shelter, if you will, right in front of whatever the craft store is by Buffalo Wild Wings. And that's pretty much right across the street. And there's another one on that side of the street, not very far away from where this project is either. And the sidewalks are fairly extensive throughout the area.
I will note, I'm not sure that map has been updated just yet, because I know there's a stop near my house that is not reflected on that
Okay, so
map.
I'm not looking at good data, thank you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just want to clarify.
No, it's one of the reasons, it's important to us, it is important to have bus transportation there.
Yeah, it's really important for me too, and that's why, because I
Oh,
was
yeah.
looking at, and I know that there's no sidewalk on the side of the street that the property's on, but there's one really close by, and I am concerned about people crossing to get onto the sidewalk from this location, because it does have to cross Stillwater, we know Stillwater's busy, and I'm trying to remember which side of the highway that store that you're talking about, it's on the other side of it.
It's on the other side.
It's on the other side of it. Okay.
And what I can tell you also is that there is a controlled intersection there at Garden Way, a traffic light with crosswalk. So to get across, it's within what you would consider, although it's not strictly speaking a city block, in terms of distance, it is within that very same sort of measurement, if you will, less than a city block, I would say, before the controlled intersection, the traffic light at Garden Way. So people do cross quite often. There's a tremendous amount of foot traffic on Stillwater down there, as it is right now. And they travel back and forth from Acadia in some cases, but also from convenience store, and there's a laundromat down there and a pizza place. And on the other side, you're actually working your way toward the mall, Kohl's, and that development right there with Lone Star Steakhouse. So there's quite a bit of foot traffic in that area, and they do so. They transmit themselves very safely too. It seems to be a very common thing.
Okay, so my only concern then, with all of that new information, is that there's no sidewalk from this property to Garden Way, to the crossing at Garden Way. Garden Way is the.
I don't quote me on this. I think there is, but don't quote me on it, because it's, to me, the walking, people do walk in that area, but my recollection is.
It could be the Google map I'm looking at is out of date.
Yeah,
I'll check that.
There's actually not one there, and we were talking about engineering with this during the review process. I think it is on their radar to potentially in the future put a sidewalk on that side of the road. I do just want to point out that the impact fees that are paid in this area go towards things like pedestrian infrastructure, sidewalks and things like that. I'm not saying there's a guarantee this will necessarily go towards that, but they know about the issue and this would be paid into that fund, so.
So we don't have to make the contractor do it or make the developer do it?
Well, that would be an offsite improvement if you were to do that, and that would be, that's usually.
Offsite, you mean offsite improvement?
Yeah, because you're talking about requiring them to put a sidewalk in up the street, right?
Well, I don't think they can control the property up the street, but they can control the property that they're on, right?
So they are providing a sidewalk connection to the road, to the right-of-way line from the site.
To which road?
To their front yard line on the street on Stillwater Avenue, they're providing a sidewalk connection.
Okay, but there won't be a sidewalk on the Stillwater
On
length
that,
of the property?
correct, not on that side
Okay.
yet.
So this is my concern, that we provide proper pedestrian access from there to Garden Way. That's my concern. My other concern is about bicycle safety on Stillwater Avenue. And I don't think that that's an issue for you, but I just wanted to bring it up because it was brought to my attention that if we are gonna propose a project that's gonna rely on significant bicycle riding population, we might consider bike lanes on Stillwater Avenue as well.
That's also on engineering's radar and.
Excellent.
The Bangor Area Comprehensive Transportation System, so just
Great.
know that, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me just point out that the staff has recommended conditional approval based on a number of items. These items are highlighted in our packet, and they'll be discussed as we go through the approval process. These include that water district approval for the fixture count prior to the issuance of the building permit, the Penjajawak Marsh Commission recommendations for bird-friendly windows and building design and yellow lighting, the mall impact fee being paid to the engineering department, and the building design should meet the requirements for co-living dormitory as in code section 165-13. So, are there other comments?
So I am going to request, and I'll cut in at the appropriate time when you're making your findings, but I will be requesting the board, or recommending that you make a condition that prior to them getting a certificate of occupancy, that they get the applicable short-term rental licensing, business licensing, that they do only have the maximum of 25% of the building be short-term rental, and that they provide contact info for the on-site manager for the property.
So will you tell us which
Yes, when you get to that
item we
point.
need to attach that condition to?
Yes, and you can also, and you're welcome to discuss this, but if there's a concern about a bus stop, you can ask the applicant to have a conversation with the Community Connector about the possibility of putting a bus stop there. So that's just up to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now, public comments. Yes, sir, please come up.
Thank you. My name is Jim Allen. I live in the development right behind this property we're discussing. First off, thank you, Paul, for keeping good care of that line we talked about, the trail and mowing it. And
Yes.
even though it's a short distance, it's better than the rest of it. So thank you for maintaining that.
Yes, thank you.
We've appreciated that. I only have a couple of questions, and because I couldn't see what was going on here with the map and everything. Is there a consideration for a buffer zone between what's developed and the trail?
I can, yeah. So as I had mentioned, the property does not go all the way back to the trail. The storage facility has the lot, and then they own up the trail. I think it's 444 Stillwater Oceanside Properties. Their lot comes out and back all the way down to the storage facility. So there's a strip all the way along here that's currently undeveloped, not part of this lot. It essentially serves as a buffer. As we mentioned, the applicant is going to try and work with them to get some sort of an easement to have a walkway type connection and potentially tie sewer into here rather than go through their parking lot. But no plans to sort of wipe out that whole buffer other than to try and maybe put a trail through there.
Well, I think for those folks who live down in that corner of the development, they would very much appreciate that not disappear.
Right.
And the parking is to the back of the buildings, is that the way this looks here?
So Stillwater is here.
Okay, parking.
Parking here, so it's, I would say, side of the building, I don't know.
Parking here.
Yes.
Yeah, so on the side, okay, I'm just curious about that. I'm glad that the bus situation was brought up and just sheer traffic on Stillwater Avenue. I'm sure you all know what that's like. I don't know, Paul, do you get feedback from people coming out of your storage facility as to any difficulties in that area that's unusual to anything?
They really
So,
don't. They
and
really
sure,
don't.
if you wanna come up to the podium and
I'm sorry.
it's okay. And typically the questions are asked to the board and then the board can redirect. So,
So in regards to that bus situation, I don't know if that is something that couldn't be built into that area, because it concerns me that a bus pulling up at that area, if it was on Stillwater Avenue, would be a difficult traffic-wise situation, whereas there is no real pull-out for buses along there, really.
They do it at Acadia.
They do, yes, and I don't know, because theoretically, the speed limit is 25 miles an hour at Acadia. It's 35 in the section we're talking about. And we all know that that's probably not obeyed by a lot of drivers. 45 is not unusual, and I've lived in that area since the development was put in, and until we got streetlights out there, you couldn't even get out of that development safely, so it is a concern about the traffic flow there. I don't think that it probably prevents him from having this built, but it's a concern, and I think that's something, and maybe that's something that's being looked at again, this comprehensive plan with bike paths and sidewalks and things like that in that area. As it gets more developed, it's going to be more necessary. So it is just a concern. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody on Zoom?
Carrie, you can go ahead and talk.
I can't see.
Brian, can you do a request to unmute? Yeah, there you go.
I guess not, huh? Nobody on Zoom?
I don't know if she's trying to talk. Maybe give it a second. Well, maybe not if they're continuing to stay muted, so.
Okay.
She may be
I think
muted.
I'll close the public comments then. So before going on to motions on the standards, do any board members have any issues they'd like to bring up before the votes? Ask Member Jonas to keep your eye out for that opportunity to make that condition on the bus conversation.
I don't even know where that would fit in, but I will
I
try.
looked briefly through the standards, and I didn't see right away which one it would, but you might see it. So, the first part of the standards are the project meets requirements for Articles 2 through 12.
Vice Chair.
Yes.
So I'll start. I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 3, and 7, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-33's requirements regarding filling, grading, and earth moving activities, and section 165-33-1's requirements regarding erosion and sediment control best practices.
Seconded,
Roll call vote, Member Bazinet,
yes.
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Second item?
Chair,
Member Bazinet?
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 20, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-68's requirements for lot frontage.
Do I have a second? Member Boucher? Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes,
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Third item.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Member Bazinet.
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 12, and 20, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-72, requiring adequate parking spaces and a minimum of 2 handicapped accessible spaces.
I have a second. Member Boucher? Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
yes,
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 4.
Chair.
Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 5, 12, and 20, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-73, regarding parking area location, setbacks, and screening, and Section 165-74 regarding minimum design standards for surface parking and parking lot design.
Second.
Second.
Member Bazinet? Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes,
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 5.
Mr. Chair?
Member Bazinet?
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 21, and 22, and 26, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code 165-79 and 80, requiring adequate connection to necessary utilities, including public water and sewer when possible, with the condition that the applicant receive approval from the Bangor Water District for a fixture count form for the project prior to receiving a building permit.
Second. Member Jonas? Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
yes,
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 6.
Chair?
Member Hayes? Member Jonas, sorry.
Here, I move that the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 3, and 8, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-81, requiring appropriate outdoor lighting and the prevention of light trespass onto adjacent properties.
May I have a second? Member Boucher? Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
yes,
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 7. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 3, and 18, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-82, requiring adequate fire protection.
Second. Member Bazinet? Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
yes,
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 8.
Chair?
Member Bazinet?
I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-83, requiring adequate electrical services.
Second. Member Bazinet? Member Boucher? Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 9.
Mr. Chair?
Member Jonas?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 3, 5, 7, and 28, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-84, requiring provisions for surface water and storm drainage.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Member Hayes? Roll call vote. Member Boucher? Member Bazinet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
yes,
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 10,
Mr. Chair,
Member Bezanet.
I'll move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 3, 5, 21, and 22, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, section 165-85 and 165-86, requiring compliance with submitting information on anticipated sanitary flows and compliance with sewer regulations.
May I have a second?
Second.
Member Jonas. Roll call vote, Member Bezanet?
Yes?
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That concludes part number 1. Part number 2, the project meets the district site development standards under Article 14. I'm sorry, item 19.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 5, 15, and 20, the applicant satisfied section 165-135 of the Land Development Code regarding height limits, building envelope standards, floor area ratio, impervious surface ratio, and buffer yards.
Seconded.
Second, Member Bezanet. Roll call vote. Member Bezanet.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That concludes part 2. Part number 3. Part number 3 is a project meets the requirements of section 165-101 shopping and personal service district.
Mr. Chair,
Member Bezanet.
I'll move the board finds that based on the findings made in parts 1 and 2 of section 4 of this document, as well as exhibit 12, noting the proximity to a public transit route, the project meets the requirements of section 165-101 for permitted use, co-living dormitory within shopping and personal service district, SNPS.
Just want to cut in, I think this would be the appropriate location to add the condition on the short-term rental and business licensing. I have
Can you speak up with the condition that,
so I can add wording for you.
Thank you.
I would propose the wording be that, the condition be that they receive business and short-term rental licensing as applicable, and they provide the contact information for an on-site manager, and also show that no more than 25% of the building is used for short-term rentals before they receive the certificate of occupancy.
To include verbiage as stated by Planning Officer Colette.
yeah, can we get all that? Okay, roll, second? Do you have a second? Member Boucher. Roll call vote?
Is this,
Member
excuse me,
Bezanet.
sorry, Mr. Chair, is this where we're supposed to add that request about the public transit too?
Unrelated to this.
You could add that here. I thought it was a little different just because this talks about a route versus stop, but if you want to
Okay,
add that there,
no,
you
that's
can.
fine, no, that's fine,
I mean, it's
You
up to
want
you.
to add that here?
So,
no, do it later.
okay.
Okay. So with,
We have a motion in a second.
so the motion is as moved by Member Bassinet with the verbiage added from Ms. Colette and seconded by Member Boucher. Roll call vote. Member Bassinet.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 2.
Chair. I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 5, and 32, the project meets the requirements of the contract zone, which prohibits certain uses, which limits the building's height and the amount of outdoor display or storage on the site.
I'll second that.
Second, okay. Roll call vote. Member Bassinet.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That concludes item number 3. Item number 4. The project meets the requirements of section 165-108.1 Penjajawak Marsh Overlay Zone. May I have a motion?
Chair.
Member Hayes.
I move the board finds that based on Exhibit 33, the project meets the requirements of Section 165-108.1, requiring the Penjajawak Marsh Bangor Mall Management Commission to meet with the developer, provide comments and recommendations, and maintain that no structures be established within 250 feet of the upland edge of the Penjajawak Marsh.
Second.
Second, Member Jonas. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That concludes item part 4. Part 5. Project meets requirements of section 165-114 land development approval standards. Item number 1.
Mr. Please, Member Jones.
Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 5, 12, and 16, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code Section 165-114B and C regarding the proposed parking and loading layout and the proposed access drives from the site to any public right-of-way being arranged in a reasonable and safe configuration, including the provision for safe pedestrian travel to all on-site uses.
This might be a good place for that bus stop, but of course, discuss it if you want to do that.
Do you have the verbiage, or who has the verbiage for that?
I think the verbiage would be something like they provide evidence that they've had a conversation with Community Connector about having a bus stop here. You can't require them to have a bus stop there because that's really up to Community Connector, but you can ask that they reach out to Community Connector.
Okay, so how would I word that?
So
we can't make it a condition.
Well, you can't make it a condition that they have a bus stop there, but you can make it a condition that they have a conversation with Community Connector about having a bus stop there.
Okay, so what I said before, with the condition that the applicant have a conversation with the Community Connector about the possibility of adding a bus stop at the property.
Yeah, probably prior to a building permit.
To building permit?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
You got that? Second, Member Bazinet. Okay, roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 2. I have a motion. Member Bazinet?
John.
Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 3, 5, 7, and 28, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114D's requirements for preventing adverse effects from stormwater runoff and ensuring adequate capacity of stormwater collection systems to handle runoff from the development.
I have a second. Member Bazinet. Roll call vote.
Mr. Chair,
Solicitor.
David needs.
Just looked like you did skip one, but you can do this one first and then go back.
I'm sorry, yes.
It's okay.
Did
You can go ahead with that one.
We did number 1 with the condition, right?
You did number 1, yes.
And then I read number 2?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought never mind, you're correct. I'm wrong. Thank you.
You're allowed one per day. Yeah. No, thank you. Did we have a second on
We're
that?
ready for the vote.
Yeah, we seconded it.
Okay.
I did, yeah.
Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Okay, moving ahead. Item number 3.
Mr. Chair,
Member Bazinet.
a motion the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 3, and 8, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114.E's requirements that all outdoor lighting shall be designed, installed, and maintained to avoid unreasonable adverse effects from light pollution.
May I have a second? Member Boucher. Roll call vote, Member Bassinet,
Yes?
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 4. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Member Jonas?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 5, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114.F's requirements for landscaping, tree preservation, and species type.
May I have a second? Member Hayes? Roll call vote, Member Bassinet,
Yes?
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item number 5. I have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Member Bassinet,
I'll move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 5, and 20, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114G's requirements for building location and setbacks.
second. Member Boucher, roll call vote, Member Bassinet,
Yes?
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Item number 6.
Before you get started on this one, this contains the conditions that the Penjajawat Commission, the recommendations they had made. And we just wanted to recommend you discuss these with the applicant beforehand, or discuss amongst yourselves prior to making them, just because they're not typical conditions, and so you might want to discuss it with them, make sure it's feasible before you make it a condition, just recommendation.
Have these been discussed with the applicant already?
Yes, Sean was there at the Penjajawat meeting and is aware, and we also sent these to them beforehand, so it's up to you what you want to do.
The applicant has a comment?
I actually served on that committee for a brief period of time, and we'll do everything we can to comply with the recommendations. I've done a little preliminary research when it comes to lighting. The yellow lighting tends to be high-intensity discharge, which is very energy inefficient, opposed to LED in terms of exterior lighting. We'll research it, but it may be that that yellow lighting is less than practical and less than overall good. The lighting will be conventional, it's not brightly lit. And the bird windows, that's still a matter of research too. We're very, we like birds. There'll be bird feeders at the site, I believe. But in terms of the actual spec for those windows, it's a little elusive. Typically that spec is applied to high rises. This is a one-story building. High rises in cities, they have issues with migratory birds up very high. This is a very low building. The trees are much higher than the building itself. So the actual windows and the actual glazing, fenestration, if you will, it's still sort of a research work in progress. I'm not quite sure how that will ultimately shake out.
Just wanted to provide a little context, because we actually had a lecture on bird-friendly windows 2 years ago. There are things that you can do, like add screening, or even certain shades, like the way they appear inside the window, or even decals can be added. So there are cheaper things that can be done to windows, but of course, you know, it's whatever's feasible for the project. I just wanted to mention that those are some things that.
Yeah, we'll certainly look into that, certainly. Practically speaking, we'll certainly do our best with that.
I wonder then, this condition then bothers me with that. It says that with the condition that the project uses yellow exterior lighting. I wonder if we should change that to uses bird-friendly exterior lighting.
So.
Is there such a thing as bird-friendly exterior lighting?
Well, the concern of the commission was primarily about insects, because lighting at night can disrupt the, basically a lot of things that go on with nocturnal insects and animals at night. So their concern was less about birds as far as the lighting goes. They were concerned about birds as far as the windows went.
Okay, so it's not bird friendly, it's insect friendly.
Nocturnal insect slash animal friendly, yeah,
So lights that don't attract insects.
correct.
Like, so lights that don't attract insects, you know, how
Yeah.
like the white lights, they say don't have them because the moths will come around.
I suppose.
Yeah,
It's a tough nut to crack. If you know that area, we are at the Bangor Mall area. And even the street lighting, just regular city of Bangor maintained street lighting are essentially high output LEDs and they're white lights. And that's the city's lighting too, that's surrounding the area. And of course, once you start getting into the larger mall properties, it's of that nature too, so.
This property's impact would be rather limited, wouldn't you say?
I would, but then the condition that still remains, whether we should strike that condition.
How about worded that to the best extent as practical?
that's.
How do you
that's a
enforce
measure.
that?
Yeah,
Well, how do you measure any of this?
well, if there's prescribed, like for the lighting, you know, there's like prescribed lighting that the planning board provides them, say use this lighting. Is there a lack of prescribed window treatment or a lack of prescribed lighting?
You can get, I mean, you can dig down and pretty much find anything. It's the intersection of practicality, but also it's the intersection of utility too. One of the heightened concerns when we were putting this project together was to make sure that it's a good neighbor to the neighborhood, and it's also something that is secure. There's been, you know, you want to have it adequately lit, not to be an attractive nuisance to people going up and down Stillwater and things of that nature. So it's not, you know, a high intensity security lighting, but it's something that throws off sufficient lumens in a way that's effective, that it doesn't bring an attractive nuisance with the woods and everything around it. So the lighting thing is important to us, but it's also important that it be appropriate. And it is also important for us to be energy efficient as well. It's when you get into specs for insects and birds at night and that kind of thing, it becomes very difficult on a very basic building block of what you're developing. It's tough and it's a bit amorphous and it causes consternation. We're committed to best practice, but those kind of standards can be difficult, perhaps unnecessarily so, perhaps not. We would appreciate somewhat of a modification on that, perhaps along the lines of your motion potential.
How about on the condition that the project uses environmentally appropriate exterior lighting? Maybe that's kind of a meaningless statement.
Typically, photo generation studies are more concerned with lumens and how they sort of, where the lighting flow goes toward the property boundaries. Those other kind of criteria are far less defined and far harder to sort of get arms around. We will have good lighting, and the lighting will be entirely appropriate for the project. It's important.
Any suggestions?
This language came from the commission?
Yeah.
From the
Conjunction.
Marsh Commission.
Yeah, the Conjunction Mall Marsh Commission.
They don't want to install lighting that is not energy efficient, and that would be yellow lighting.
Typically, that's high-intensity sodium discharge, and those are out of favor in terms of a number of different criteria, but primarily the energy kind of thing. It
Is there a
does all go
filter
to
that
LED right now.
Is there a filter that can be installed over the LED?
That's a good question. I can tell you that anything in terms of a lens, anything in terms of that kind of filtering is.
How about the engineer?
A specialty item. I'm not sure.
I am not an electrical engineer.
Yeah, it's not.
Know much about lighting. I mean, there's shields and things that you can put to direct lighting, but I don't know about some sort of a a filter to somehow change.
Chair, I have another comment. Does the Marsh Management Commission have authority over the board on this issue?
No, they just provide recommendations and then you choose whether you want to make that a condition or not.
Okay.
So I think we can keep the language in accordance with the recommendations of the Penjajawak Marsh. But it sounds like appropriate, so if we say, rather than yellow exterior lighting, appropriate lighting, and uses bird-friendly practices for the design of windows and building facade in accordance. So just take out the word yellow.
No.
We just uses exterior lighting.
Yeah.
Is yellow the main sticking point?
It is, that was their main thing, was having it be yellow in color, so. And you,
I know,
you did
okay.
also make other findings on having appropriate lighting, just want to point that out, so.
It's going to use much more electricity to comply with the yellow.
It's significant.
Which
The difference
defeats
is
the-
absolutely significant. The sodium discharges, it's not even something they make in any great numbers now. It's like incandescent light bulbs versus LED. It's available, I suppose you can get it. It's just that noisy yellow light. When it comes to residential lighting, if you remember, sometimes the back porch light would be a yellow light bulb, and that was supposed to keep down bugs or something like that. I think perhaps the Marsh Committee, again, a committee I served on very briefly, I think they might have been channeling that. I don't want to speak for them, but I'm not quite sure they had in mind transferring that to a commercial project like this. This is a relatively small scale, being one story, and it's parking lot lighting, and all of the entryways are on one side and the parking lot light, minimum light on the butter on the other side, the 440, the office building there. So,
Given his footprint and where he is, he's not the larger contributor to light pollution in that area.
I'm surrounded by it, actually. It's,
I mean, I think we're kind of getting hung up in the weeds here a little bit.
Well, we want to make the condition reasonable. I don't think the way it's written now is reasonable.
So strike yellow.
So uses
we-
appropriate lighting,
Could we,
appropriate exterior lighting.
could we,
Remove the condition for the lighting, because if
I'm
we take,
sorry,
could we
can-
remove the condition for the lighting, since if we take yellow out, it makes no sense? And leave the condition for the bird-friendly windows, or window, what was the term that you
Or we
used?
just strike, why
Windows
don't
and
we just
facade.
strike anything on lighting?
That's, maybe,
Just
that's my
use-
question, could we do that?
We can do anything we want.
Well,
There's,
I'm wondering, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I'm wondering if there's a connection between the insects and the birds, because there is a large bird population there. I don't know.
it is
I'm just-
nighttime though. Typically the birds nest at night. I mean, I know there's nocturnal birds, there's owls and things, but it's.
well, the thought is that a lot of these nocturnal insects are like moths and things like that, and their caterpillars in turn feed the birds that are active in the daytime. So that's the thought process.
Thank you.
so I would suggest that we make the condition that the project uses appropriate exterior lighting and uses bird-friendly practices. Do we need to vote on that, or?
Yes, you need to vote on the finding, and then you would make your condition with your modified wording.
The bird-friendly practices had to do with the design of the windows in the building facade.
That's right.
It didn't have to do with the lighting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't, just didn't complete the phrase.
Okay.
Well, can I have a motion? We're stuck on this one.
Chair, I would just add that the condition that's proposed here was recommended by the commission. it doesn't have to, you can choose to not have a condition. You could choose to have the recommended conditions, or you could choose to modify the condition. It's up to you.
Well, I'll make a motion that we modify the condition.
Second.
And modification should be that the project uses appropriate exterior lighting and bird-friendly practices for the design of the windows and the building facade.
I'll second that.
Second.
So we have to read the whole thing though. Right, don't we have to read the whole section the board finds?
Yeah, David said we had to vote to modify it.
No,
So
you don't have to
you could
vote
just
to modify it. I was just saying that you weren't required to put the condition in.
Yeah.
I was just saying you could put it in, you could not put it in, or you could modify it. And you could do that by the way of your motion. You could read the motion and just substitute the word appropriate for yellow, if that's what I heard just now.
May I have a motion? Member Boucher.
Okay, I move the board finds that based on exhibit 2, 8, 9, and 28, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code section 165-114H's requirements regarding the prevention of unreasonable adverse impacts to significant wildlife habitat and natural areas, with the condition that the project uses, what's the term we use? Appropriate. Yeah, appropriate exterior lighting and uses bird-friendly practices for the design of windows and building facade in accordance with the recommendations of the Pinjajawak Marsh Bangor Mall Management Commission.
Second.
Seconded.
Roll call vote. Member Boucher, Member Bazinet,
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Yes. Member Jonas.
No.
I'm sorry,
No.
no. Chair votes yes, so that motion does pass. Okay, now the decision, and now there's,
So when you make this, since you've done a lot of modifications and adopted new conditions, it might be easier if you make the motion, but then you just refer back to the wording of the conditions you've made previously, and we can go in and fill that in when we finalize this. We can fill in the specific language if you would prefer.
In other
Does that
words,
make sense?
I think, in other words, what you're saying is, instead of saying with the following conditions,
Yeah.
you'd say with the conditions
That were made earlier.
that were made earlier during the
Yeah.
motions.
Did we make
with the conditions.
conditions for C and D earlier? For the impact fee payment and for the
Yeah, that's a good
stipulations?
point. You do need to make the one on the building impact fee.
I think I got it. So I think if I would read the green, I'd read C and D, and then I'd say, and in addition to the conditions made previously.
Yep, I think that would make sense.
Any discussion?
Let's just go down the list. We have A, we've already included that one in a previous motion. Item number B, we've included that one in the previous motion.
Except for the word yellow on B.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it was changed to appropriate.
Yeah. Item C, we have not had that included yet. I think item D, we've covered that.
And then you would
But
be
there was
adding in the condition on the licensing, the on-site manager, and the bus stop.
Oh, we didn't cover item D yet, did we?
No.
Yeah, item D wasn't previously covered, so you would.
It was not.
You'd need to state that one.
But I think you're right, that we should refer to the previous conditions because we also added an additional condition that's not in this, I almost said script. So I think that we probably do need that catch-all for the ones above.
Chair,
I
I move the board. Oh, are we okay for a motion?
Yep.
Okay, I move the board finds that the project meets the requirements for the land development permit for a major site development, and therefore the board grants the land development permit for the proposed project with the following conditions. Evidence is provided that an impact fee in the amount of $8,728.58 has been paid to the engineering department prior to the building permit being issued. And D, the project meets the stipulations outlined in the definition of co-living dormitory contained in section 165-13 of the city's Code of Ordinance, as well as the additional conditions referenced above.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Member Best, Ms. Name.
Yes.
Member Boucher.
Yes.
Member Hayes.
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that project has been approved.
Yeah, George. The informal rule is always once something's approved, stop talking. I have a hard time doing this. I want to say thank you all very much. We're excited about this project, and we're very excited about the possibility of providing affordable housing and having that affordable housing really mesh with economic development at the mall. And, thanks to your approvals tonight in the approval process with planning and planning officer Colette process through. I think we have a very good project, and I should stop talking and just say thank you, and that's it.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to other business. This is a discussion on the proposed code change. Uses requiring land development permit by planning officer Colette.
Yep. Sorry if this is a little hard to get through after everything else, but basically what we're proposing is
Gentlemen, can you take it out in the hall, please? Thank you.
in the land development permit requirements, there are several uses in there, items 7 through 10, that talk about needing a land development permit when you either construct or renovate sites with 3 or more dwelling units, which can include apartment buildings and things like that. And then also construction or renovation of 3 or more commercial units, or a combination of those things. And that language was added back in 2017, and I think at the time, they were trying to get at the state subdivision statute, but it actually goes way above and beyond subdivision statute, because that currently just requires that you get subdivision or land development permit approval for when you create 3 or more units, or when you convert commercial or industrial property into 3 or more residential dwelling units. So since this can, it can really prove a burden to small developers, small scale property owners that are maybe just trying to add 1 more dwelling unit, or somebody who's just doing renovations on the inside of their building. So what we propose is replacing that language with language that just mainly matches the state subdivision statute to make sure that we're being in line with that. And this would be in line with the comprehensive plan, since that talks about reducing barriers to housing. And the current language also kind of discourages investment into renovation of structures, which is not something we want to see. So I'm open to any questions.
Any comments from the board, or questions?
Just a comment, your brief was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it goes to the city council for approval, is that right?
Yep, so it'll go to first reading, and then it'll come back to you in August, and then go back to them for approval. So,
Any other comments or suggestions? Thank you. Next item is the adoption of a notice of decision on 327 Overland Road, Geary Hotel Management. The motion? We did this in the last meeting. Motion on the findings of that decision. Looking for motion to adopt this finding, yes, Member Boucher?
I move that the board adopts the notice of decision for 327 Island Road, Jury Hotel Management.
I have a second, Member Bazinet. Roll call vote, Member Bazinet,
Yes.
Member Boucher,
Yes.
Member Hayes,
Yes.
Member Jonas.
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. Okay, coming down to the wire, the last item of business is the minutes from the meeting of July 2nd. Any additions or changes? I have a motion for acceptance of these minutes.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve meeting minutes from July 2nd, 2024 as is.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, sir. Any other business?
Signatures.
Move to adjournment. You all? Yes. Do you have anything to sign?
yeah, but it says nice.
Yeah, but it's all downhill for me from here. Oh, no, I can't see.
So just want to pass it along.
Okay.
No, my mother's.
The auditors in my office for 2 days.
Oh, wow.
One of the worst lady.
Yeah.
I was going around.
I know it's a lot of.
Okay, so that wasn't as big, actually, as I thought it was gonna be. It was on the list.
You start getting 3 sets of comments day out.
Oh, absolutely. We can't define what it means.
I've been terrible down here.
And the engineer.
I couldn't figure out last time. I called the guy named Justin Jason. Somebody named Amanda.
We got
people I know. No, just all over the place.
Well, we were looking at our watches, wondering if she was gonna get hers, because we wouldn't, been able to do anything. if we-
Yeah.
Oh, really?
What?
Oh, sorry.
You were just a minute late.
Cheers.
I have family visiting.
Pieces of the
He does a good job. He really does.
And,
No, I didn't